We know what you've come for, and now we're going to give it to you. You're listening to the No Such Thing podcast.
Hello folks, this is Cornell from the No Such Thing podcast, and this week we're going to have another Bigfoot episode. Shelly Alston has had numerous encounters over the years down in Mena, Arkansas, in other places too, but she owns a zipline park and a farm, and she has had multiple encounters on that property. There's a lot of acreage around her, and it's been in the family since the 1800s, so this should be quite interesting. Hope everybody's keeping safe out there. The virus is starting to ramp up, and we're not on lockdown yet, but we're waiting on a shelter-in-place order, so I'll definitely have a lot more time to do podcasts if that's the case, because we won't be able to leave the house. And if that's the way it is, that's the way it is. If it's for the best, then I'm all for it. So anyway, keep safe out there, folks, and enjoy the show. So we have Shelly Alston on the show. Is that how you pronounce your name?
Yes, Alston, yes.
Okay, how's things down there in Arkansas?
Oh, they're doing all right. We're, staying safe, social distancing, and avoiding the COVID, at least trying to.
Yeah, no lockdown in place yet?
Not yet. So they're just, saying that if you don't have to go out, don't go out. So we're trying not to go out. The only place, we've been is like the pharmacy.
Yeah, I think they're going to hit us probably tomorrow with it.
It's just a little scary out there. We're getting more and more cases every day. So I think we've got 2 cases. Yesterday I went and got checked out myself. I've got a cold. It's your regular run-of-the-mill corona, not the COVID.
Right.
So, so I had a lady up there in the room next to me that was a suspected case.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, so that's my closest exposure that I know of.
You must have been a little nervous there for a minute.
Yeah, because I can hear the doctor talking to her, and I can hear the doctor on the phone, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm hoping, this isn't airborne and floating into my room.
Yeah.
It's a little tough out there, when people pull up to your house, you don't know, have they been exposed, what are they wanting? Because we did have somebody pull up today, wanting to know if they could go fishing in the pond. And, it's a little scary right now. You've just got to be safe, pay attention.
Right, and you run a business down there also, don't you? Is that closed down?
Yeah, we've got zip lines, and we can't open, and until they really say we can open. And I'm not opening for probably, oh gosh, it's going to be May probably.
Right.
With our guide training for our tour guides for the zip lines, they have to be certified annually. So recertification has been postponed until the end of April. So after that, we can open, but whether or not it's going to be safe to open, I have no clue. But it's probably going to be more like probably the end of May.
I know, hopefully,
Mm-hmm.
Well, so let's get to the subject matter anyway. Why don't you give me a little bit of biographical information on yourself real quick?
All right. I live just outside of Mena, Arkansas. I was born and raised here. I moved away for 18 years. Moved back in 2008. And so I live on the family farm. It's been in my family since 1897. We've had a lot of activity here over the years. And, I just, I love being on this farm. I don't want to ever move back to the city again. We've got, the mountains. We're in the Ouachita Mountains. Beautiful. We've got creeks, rivers. There's swimming, hiking, hunting, whatever you want to do. We've got it, for outdoor adventures. There's kayaking on the Cossatot, canoeing, whatever you want to do. Gold panning, hey, we got that too.
Really? Yeah. And is that like a heavily forested area with mountains?
It is.
Stuff?
We've got the Washita National Forest, and it's absolutely beautiful. There's a lot of virgin timber places that people, I don't think probably, no one's ever logged or even attempted to log. And then there's others where it's been clear cut and replanted in pine trees. I'm not too keen on that, but because I really like the colors in the fall, and I think when you start replanting, but everything in pine, you're eventually going to change your ecosystem, and a lot of people are in agreement with me on that. And so, talk about forested area. We've got the national forest, beautiful, beautiful. And of course, then we've got all the private land. So you've got a lot of farms around. So you've got a lot of pastures. You've got a lot of private wooded acreage. Like we've got some wooded acreage here, probably maybe a third of the property is in woods. So we've got this one tall ridge that is still forested. And that actually is an Indian burial ground. So that really, no one can build or anything on that. Really, they're not supposed to drive on it, log on it, nothing. So, and I'm fine with that. It's just absolutely beautiful. And in that particular area is where we've had a lot of sightings as well.
Okay, do you want to take us into some of those then?
Yeah, I guess the first time I saw one, I was 11 years old. I was walking down the driveway, and our driveway is it's about almost a quarter of a mile long. And there's a culvert that goes underneath the road. And I was looking, squatted down and started to look underneath the culvert when I heard a branch break off a tree. And I looked up, and there it was. It was about 100 yards away. And its body was facing me. It was right at the edge of the tree line. And its left arm was reaching up where it had broken a limb off the tree. And it was looking at, what it had its hand on the tree. And it had its face turned that way. And so I could see that it was not a bear. No snout, like a flat face, like a human, or like an ape would have. The color of it, I would say it had like a medium hair. It wasn't like real long flowing hair, just like medium length hair, black with a little bit of brown, like maybe lightened from possibly the sun or something like that. The length of the legs and arms were halfway between between human and a chimp. So it had the longer torso, longer torso than a human, but still shorter than what an ape would have. And then legs were a little shorter than a human's. Arms were longer than a human's. So, but this one was probably at least 8, maybe 9 feet tall. And I left there as fast as I could. I ran back to the house. And of course, when I made it to the yard, I'm yelling, "It's a Bigfoot! There's a Bigfoot out here! It's a Bigfoot!" And I know it probably heard me. I don't see how it could have not. And by the time everybody ran out of the house, which is like 5, 6, 7 seconds, it was gone. So it, probably my yelling scared it away. And I didn't see another one until, after I moved back home.
Now, sorry to interrupt you. Now, how old were you in this first encounter?
I was 11.
So this thing's twice the size of you, basically.
Yeah. I mean, I was probably 4 feet tall at that time.
Wow.
Yeah, and that didn't deter me from going out and exploring. I still went up in the North 40 by myself. I was always going up there by myself, climbing up on the ridge there and up on the rocks, and going down through the tall cane. I just leave the house and go off and do my own thing. And that particular area there on the creek, I mean, they're there a lot of activity there. But they never bothered me. And I didn't think about it. I wasn't scared. I loved it up there on the creek. It's like my magical area. Yeah.
Now, being in your family for so long, this property, I mean, other family members must have been aware of it, must have had their own sightings.
My grandpa worked from daylight till dusk. And I'm sure he had to have seen this. 1, 2, family, whatever, the same one, I don't know. But I don't care if he saw 50 of them or if he saw aliens, whatever it was.
Yeah.
He's not going to talk about it. He just was not a person who's going to talk about such things. My dad, as a kid, he would see some strange tracks out and strange markings, but he didn't really think much of it. And he actually did not see one until probably 2014 or 15 was actually the first time he saw one. And that was here on the farm. It was on one of our tallest ridges that we had cut some, had it cleared off. And so you could easily see something. It just walked around from the north side of that ridge, which is like a round knoll, and just walked around the side of it to the south and then went back to the west. And we've had some stuff. Other experiences my dad has had is things throwing rocks at his house. So that was when he was selling some timber off the North 40. And I wasn't too keen on it either, but, Bigfoot, he was having a fit. But he kept on throwing rocks at my dad's house, after that logging started. And they were up there, it seemed like, I don't know, several weeks, maybe 6 weeks, something like that. And then I think at that time I don't remember if it was that time or not, but there was another time when I also had little pebbles being thrown at my house and would hit the back windows of the house.
There's nothing else that does that, right? I mean, bears don't throw rocks.
No, I don't know of anything that throws rocks. No.
Yeah, and I've actually. Sorry to interrupt, but I just saw a video of a guy. I don't know where he was, and it was somewhere out west, and he saw one. He was out hiking, and it threw a rock at him. And that thing, I mean, they can throw rocks like baseball players. Those. If that hit you, you'd be dead.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, I've heard some stories of people talking about having large rocks thrown, like small boulders. Thank God I've never had a boulder thrown at me. Just little pebbles that's thrown at the house. There was an instance when in 2007 I was actually in the visit, and this is going to be my second encounter. I had been living in Columbus, Ohio, so we've got a lot of city lights and a lot of light pollution. And I was going to town, and it was about 9, maybe 9:30 at night, and I just stopped. I turned the engine off, turned the headlights off, and I was up by the mailbox, and I put the window down almost all the way, and just looking out the window at how beautiful the stars were. They were so bright, and I hadn't really seen that in months. And we had these really tall weeds. Now they're beautiful. They get about 8, 9 feet tall. The yellow flowers on them. I'm not sure what they're called. I've heard people say they're goldenrods, but I've heard other things called goldenrods as well. So I'm not sure on that. But they're really tall, and they were drooping over, and the tops and where they were drooping, the ends were touching the top of my van. And I was driving a Chrysler minivan at the time. And so I'm sitting there, something is walking between the van and these weeds. So it's something big, something that's big enough to rub up against these weeds. And so I know it's tall. So I did not hesitate to see what it was. I started up the van and put it in drive while I'm leaning away from the window. And then as I start to go up the road, then I get away from it, and then I reach over and turn the headlights on. That scared me. I hadn't had any experience like that before. Then I didn't see anything else during that trip to Arkansas. Now the next year when we moved back, that would have been 2008. I don't think I had anything. There may have been some strange things happen. I'm really not quite sure, but definitely nothing that I said, Bigfoot was here. I didn't see any sightings until 2011. I was growing some squash in the backyard. Actually, I think it was bushel basket gourds. And the squash bugs were attacking everything. And insecticide will not kill these things. You've actually got to catch them and mash them, squash them, or spray with soapy water. So I had a water hose in a container. I was going to spray all laundry soap, laundry detergent on them. And I looked down, and there's a pile of poop, like who has been in my yard pooping? And it's the biggest pile of poop I've ever seen. And, a lot of people, they crack up laughing when I hear this, but, I'm dead serious. There was a pile of poop, and it was quite a bit. It was like enough to fill up a gallon bucket.
Wow.
And I'm thinking, that looks like human poop. What does it smell like? So I reached down, touched it, and smelled of my finger. I think, well, I've got all detergent. I can just wash it right off. And I smelled of it. It smelled just like human poop. Did not smell like any kind of animal. I talked to one researcher later on. I said, "Hey, what does their poop smell like? Or what's it like?" He said, "Well, it smells like human poop. Except there's just a lot more of it. It looks like it, smells like human." I'm like, "Well, this has got to be what it was." And so, yeah, that's a pretty interesting thing. I wish I would have saved some of it, but I just got to use that water hose and just wash it away.
Yeah.
I didn't even think about, let's save it, get some DNA, whatever. Did not think anything about that. And then I guess to see anything later on, my son we had some things disappear. We'd find them up in the woods, like even one of them on like the neighboring property. My son had a book, a bright yellow hardback book that was sitting on the porch, and it just disappeared. We looked everywhere for it. And a few months later, I found it up in the woods on top of this ridge, and it had been termites had gotten to it and eaten part of it. I'm like, "Gregor, found your book." I found one of my scrunchies that was outside. I found it over on the neighbor's property, which is a little further past where I found the book. Just things like that, brightly colored things, moved around, disappeared. So, and then I've heard that they especially I guess the juveniles, the young ones play with stuff, just like normal human kids would. Then there was a flood. I believe it was in 2015. This was just an enormous flood. There was, people had drowned in this flood, and I think we got maybe 11 inches. I'm not sure. That the North 40 on the Irons Fork Creek, it was flooded. It was going through part of the North 40. What we call the slough was absolutely flooded. We drove over there to check on the cattle and just kind of look on the creek, just to kind of see what it was doing, if they'd gotten up any, because it was coming over the spillway north of here. About a little less than a mile from here is the Irons Fork Lake, and that's where the city of Mena and a lot of Polk County get their water from. So that was built, I believe, in 1975 or 76. Now it's been reported that there's, some living along that lake. Well, I guess it's the same one. It's just like a family, a mom, dad, and a juvenile. This flood, we were checking on that, and when we were coming back, we stopped at the pond, the big pond, and the water's going over the levee. So I stopped, got out, and then I happened to look back at the car, and the windows are up, and my son is in there freaking out. He's like telling me, like look up there. He's pointing up to the woods, and of course I'm looking up there at the tops of the trees and around the bend. I'm not seeing anything, and finally I get in. I'm like, what is it? He's like, there's this big, tall, hairy thing with these long, hairy arms pulling all these dead deer. I'm like, okay, it's Bigfoot. I'm like, okay. So I jump in the car, drive around the bend, and think I'm going to head it off, right? So I get up there, and I'm running as fast as I could. And I get up there, and it's too thickety to go any further, but I was prepared to catch me a Bigfoot. And, I wasn't scared or anything. He hasn't hurt me yet. He hasn't hurt my kid. And, he goes out and plays in the woods by himself as well, just like I did when I was a kid. I didn't catch it, but somebody told me it had 5 or 6 dead deer tied end to end, pulling them. And, I guess they're pretty intelligent. They sure know how to play hide and seek. So I think maybe with that flood, it was easy to catch all these deer with the flooded waters. And so they were just, tied end to end.
You think they were drowned or something?
You say drowned?
Yeah.
It's very possible. Maybe they'd washed up, got drowned in the flood and he collected them.
Yeah.
Or maybe it was just easy for them to chase them down with floodwaters. I don't know. Or you maybe have a combination of both things happening.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I went back the next day when me and my dad, we were going to be going to town, and we were going to go check on the cattle first. And as we're driving by, I'm like, hey, stop here. I'm going to go up here and look and see if there's any tracks or anything where he saw this thing. And I went up there, and you could see the drag marks where it had dragged all the deer. There were a lot of partial footprints. There was one really nice footprint. It was 13 inches long, maybe a little bit longer. And it was just a perfect one. And I was trying to find plaster. Nobody had plaster in this town. And I'm going around anywhere I could find. But, when I look back, of course, hindsight's always 20/20. I'm like, well, I could have got grout or even concrete. Right. I always hear people, buy plaster. Well, there wasn't any plaster. But it wasn't a real wide footprint, like some of the big footprints are like really wide. But this is more narrow. It was, again, like maybe wider than a human print, but not as wide as some of these really wide prints that you see. But it was a perfect print, and there were no deformities. Like maybe you see some prints where the toes are crooked or anything, but this was absolutely a perfect print. And I did not have my phone with me at that time. I actually left it at home. It was on 4%. I left it to charge. And I don't even remember if my phone was even doing good pictures back then. Now I've got a Samsung, and love it, and it does really great pictures, and they need to send me a phone for mentioning that. You hear that, Samsung?
Now, I always think of this because when I actually do plaster for a living, so if I'm ever out in the truck and I come across a footprint, I've got plaster in the truck at all times.
Yeah. When one of my friends down in Falk, I was looking at their vehicle. They had a few bags of plaster.
Yeah.
I've got to get some plaster and just have that with me. After that, I'm trying to think what. There was another time, I believe it was the same year, that was, I think, 2015. It was 2015 in September, and it was completely dark. The sun is completely down, so it's I don't know, 8:30 maybe, something like that. As I'm driving down the road, going home, the road comes to a T. And you go left, the road continues left, or you turn right to go to my house. So as I'm going to the T in the road, I'm kind of going downhill. I hear this whooping and hollering. I'm thinking, okay, people are down at the old shell pit, which is just around the curve, partying it up. It's people for decades have went there and partied. I think like maybe after prom parties or something, graduation parties, that sort of thing. But as I get a little closer, I realize, no, that's right there on the left. It's not even around the curve. It's right there to my left. And so when I got to the T in the road, I just kind of went wide and had my car pointing to towards my driveway, which is, we're still like a quarter of a mile from the house. And I've got the window down. I turned the engine off, turned the lights off, and I called my mom. Well, first I sent a text to a Bigfoot investigator, local guy. Never got a response. But anyway, so I called my mom. I'm like, there's this whooping and hollering, from over on this ridge to the south. I'm telling her, I don't know if she could hear the whooping or not. I don't think I had her on speakerphone, but it was making this sound that sounded like an ape. It was not a hoot owl or a coyote. I don't know what coyotes sound like, and I've heard owls. This was something I had never heard in my life, and it was coming from something absolutely huge. That it was doing this, making this sound like maybe 2 or 3 notes, but repetitively it would do it 7 or 8 times. And then it would start making this other sound, like another different kind of 2 or 3 or 4 sounds, and it'd do that 7 or 8 times, and it would go back to the original sound, and it would just alternate back and forth. And it did that for maybe 3 or 4 minutes. And now I'm still on the phone with my mom, and I'm just in awe of this. And then it quit. The noise quit. And while I'm sitting there on the phone, something bumped up against my car.
Oh, boy.
But I didn't pay it any attention because I'm so used to, maybe if I'm, leaving from the house, if I'm going up there slow, let the dogs follow if we're just going to go explore looking for fossils or something. So, if a dog just kind of bumps up against your car, that's what it felt like. Just nothing big. Just a barely little shimmering. And then about a minute or so later, something comes charging out from my left. So now whatever it was, it has crossed the road, and it bumped my car, and then now it went into the woods. Or it was a second Bigfoot. I'm not sure. It could be a second one. It comes charging through the trees and the brush, and then there's like a grassy part, about 10 feet of grass and weeds, and then the mailbox in my car. So it's crashing through the brush and trees, and then through the weeds. And it's just monstrous in the size. You can hear all these branches breaking and moving as it pushes its way through. And I never once dropped the phone. I still got the phone up to my ear. And again, like when I was in the van and something was walking between the weeds and my van, I did like the exact same thing. But this time I'm in a little bitty sports car. It's a Chrysler Crossfire. And I've got the window all the way down. And so I've got the phone still in my left hand. I'm yelling, like, oh my God. And I start up the car, put it in drive, and I'm leaning away from the window as far away as I can. And as I'm driving, then I finally get away. I turn the headlights on, and my mom's like, "Oh my God, are you okay? Are you okay?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm okay, Mom." It almost got me. So I went onto the house, and then I kind of hesitated to get out of the car because I was thinking, I'm imagining that it's just right there, that it followed me on home. But I went on into the house, and I think I actually locked the door. But yeah, that was probably one of my most thrilling moments in my life, I guess. There
are reports of them following you home, though.
Don't tell me. Yeah, I've had them looking in my window, so they know where I live.
Oh boy.
Yeah, there was one night. I think it's probably early 2000. No, it might have been like summer 2014. I was sitting on the couch one night, and I got a glance of something walking past the window. So whatever it was walking past the window, but it was just a little bit of white that I saw. And so I'm thinking maybe I saw like part of the face, teeth, eyes, or something. But whatever this was, it probably was about 7.5 to 8 feet tall. Then there was another time when I saw it outside the window. And this was in, I think, October. of this past year, 2019. I had fallen asleep on the couch, and the Yorkies, I get 2 little Yorkies about almost 2 years old, and they were on the back of the couch, and they woke me up, barking, like they could see something, like, oh, we're going to eat it up, we're going to get it. And great little watchdogs. But, so I opened my eyes and I looked, and there's some lightning in the distance. So there was a backlight where I could see the silhouette of an arm reaching across the window.
Oh my, that's super creepy.
Yeah. And I'm like, what in the world? And I'm just look at it a few minutes, and I think it moved a little bit, but I'm like, I got to get my glasses on so I can see this. So I grabbed my phone and used it to, kind of light up the area, so I could find my glasses. And I got them on. It was gone. Of course, I'm sure it saw my phone light up, and it, moved away. That I didn't see it, but I did see something reaching across the window. Big, dark, and like a huge, wide arm that would probably belong to somebody that was about 450, 500 pounds.
So these things are coming around your house. Then, what do you think their intention is? I mean, we'll get to that later, but I mean, they don't seem to be malevolent or,
No, they don't. They didn't like the logging. And, I can understand. You're taking down their home with that. So, and then the one that charged at me, I don't know. I don't know how close it may have like reached in and touched my hair. It may, or maybe only got it within a foot of me. But, whether it's never hurt. It's never hurt our dogs. We've never had any dogs disappear and not come back that we didn't eventually know what happened to them. Except there was one dog, but I think someone shot her. Or she may have got hit by a car. But all the other dogs pretty much accounted for, at least for ones in this area. Yeah, we've never had anything disastrous, killing cattle, nothing like that.
It's because what the reports I've heard is you're not too far from Texas, right? I mean, I'm in Massachusetts, so everything is like closer, but how far away would you be from like eastern Texas?
We're about 2 hours from Texarkana.
Right, because I've heard lots of stories about the big thicket and stuff, and they're really aggressive around there, and
yeah, here people going into the woods, they always take, they make sure they're armed, like going down into the woods around the Sauk, in Arkansas, where the Boggy Creek, they always make sure they're armed. And yesterday was actually the first time I went out, and armed, specifically going out to, do some research. I took Bigfoot a TV dinner. I know that sounds odd. Yesterday, I was waiting for a lawnmower repairman, and while I was outside, I heard some whooping. It sounded like a yelling howl that sounded like a tornado siren. It did that about 3 times, and so I'm like, well, I'm going to go up there and see what it is, and drove up there, and of course, a few of the dogs followed me, and there's one hound that that I know has seen it twice. She would not go out of the road. She went down the road a ways, but she's always looking back to the side where I heard the whooping or the howl, but she would not go out of the road. And so later on, I'm like, well, I'm going to take it some kind of food or some kind of treat, whatever. So my dad had some few TV dinners that he'd taken out that were they'd been in the freezer for a while. So he didn't want them. He's actually going to give them to the dogs. So I'm like, well, hey, I'm going to take one of these up there. I'm going to put it out in the woods. And he's like, yeah, sure. And so I went down this old road on this property. And there's been some trees down on it. I think there was one tree down on it. And then last fall, there was another tree, which is a pretty big log. And But now there's like 3 or 4 more trees that have been downed across this road. And people don't drive up this road. It's just walking up the road. So it's just kind of odd that all these trees are falling on this road. So I took, opened that TV dinner. I set it out and had some of those blueberry marshmallow peeps. And like, well, I'll take it a couple of those. And I left it there. Later on, I went back and checked on it. This was probably about 5, 6 hours. Well, it was almost dark. I went up there. And then at that time, I was not armed, and I wish I was. But when I took the TV dinner up there, I was armed. Anyway, but the food was still there when I went back. I didn't go check on it today. It's been one of those days where you've got kind of a cold and you don't want to leave the house.
Oh, this was yesterday?
Yeah, this was yesterday. Yeah.
So this is ongoing?
Oh, yeah, it's all the time. There's a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah, I see actually geographically you're, I'm looking at the map here, that it's at the Quachita National Forest? Washita. So that's pretty huge, yeah. And that's not too far from the Ozarks, right?
Yeah, the Ozarks is probably about another 2 hours north of here. So you've got a good space in between the two, but maybe in like an hour between the two traveling. So. And
then that space in El Dorado, is that the big thicket down there?
What's the name again?
El Dorado.
No, that's kind of I think that's pretty swampy down there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, some flatlands and a little swampy from what I remember. I haven't spent a lot of time in El Dorado. I think I just passed a couple times traveling from there, Mississippi, Louisiana.
And then you've got Oklahoma over to your northeast.
Yeah, Oklahoma. The Washita Mountains going into Oklahoma. So you've got and I don't think a little bit less populated area, somewhat around there. Like still got small towns that are just not as populated.
Right.
And you could get lost in those mountains over there. At least I would. But there's been so much activity over there and sightings. There's oh gosh. I heard a sighting yesterday over there, and a sighting last week. I heard about a sighting, so there's quite a few. Of course, I still hear about a lot of sightings in this area. The most sightings I've ever heard about in one spot is here at my place, which is like an ongoing thing.
Yeah, I have a YouTuber. He has a channel called Bigfoot and More, and he's from Oklahoma, and he says he has so many cases in Oklahoma that all of his YouTube channels is just reports from Oklahoma. He just reads them on the YouTube channel. So he's coming on probably next week.
Oh, okay. Yeah, well, that he ought to be able to, give you a few hours if you'd let him.
Yeah, he's got a lot of stories.
Yeah. When we were putting up the zip lines, and that was back in 2016, we were clearing out the corridors and testing the speed and the heights. We could hear talking up in the woods. And it wasn't like two people talking like a conversation or anything. Couldn't tell what, any of the words were. But I'm like, did you, I'm talking to my friend that was helping me. I'm like, did you hear that? And he's like, yeah, I heard that. I'm like, who is that? Who would be up there? What is going on? So I was always waiting for somebody to walk out the woods, like, is it hunters? What is this? But, this happened about 3 different days when we were working on this that we could hear talking. But we never could make out any kind of sound. Now, we did, my Shih Tzu that I had, he would go wherever we were working up there. He was my little buddy. There's one particular, when we were working on the north side of the road, this one direction, he would always look, and he would bark like something's there, an intruder. And sometimes you could smell just a slight smell that you would, just a horrible, like bad body odor, maybe a little skunk, just an undesirable smell. And later on, when we were had the company come in to finish all the installation and put up the platforms and the trees, we had pardon me, while I'm kind of letting the dogs out. There was some tree knocking. I was out in the garden, and I heard this knocking up in the woods. I'm like, well, they're not even on that side of the canyon yet. You know, and plus it's higher up that ridge. So later on, I asked them about that. And, hey, were you guys working over there on that side today? And they said, no, we weren't. I go, well, I heard some knocking. And like, well, we heard that too. We thought that was your helper. I'm like, no. I go, he was working down by the house at that time on a fence line. And but that tree knocks probably happened, probably a group of like maybe 3, and then another 3, and then 2, something like that. It seemed, wasn't all together and then just stopped. It just kind of spread out over a minute. See, I made me a list because I know with me being a little bit sick, I won't be able to remember everything. There was another time when I was doing some metal detecting up on the northern part of the property, and I was digging down to see how far this ground went, this shale. That I don't know, is it all, how loose is it? Has this always been here? Did it wash here? How far down to bedrock? And so, I'm digging there. I've got the Shih Tzu, the pit mix, and then the two of the hounds are up there with me. And the big dogs, Shih Tzu's close to me. The other dogs are just kind of laying out there, taking it easy. And all of a sudden, one of them sees something, then the other one sees it, and I guess they all see it, and they take off after it, but like it was an intruder, not like it's a coyote or a deer. And then they kind of, want to chase it and, have a good hunting race. But this, you could tell the way they were barking, it was like an intruder bark. And they ran into this, it's like a little gully with trees and a lot of cane. And so I wanted to see what they were chasing, and so I went up higher elevation. So now I'm up probably about maybe 25, 30 feet higher than what they are. And then I saw it. The dogs were coming back. They'd finished chasing whatever it was, and they were coming back. And then I saw it run across the field back towards the creek. And it was probably 10 to 11 feet tall and very dark, and it glided as it ran.
How far away was this?
It was probably about, probably 110, 120 yards.
Wow, that's huge.
Yeah. It was very dark in color. So it was, and I would say it was a male. I think the females have breasts that are very obvious, particularly when they're nursing. And a friend of mine goes over just into Oklahoma, and he has a picture of one. It's a female with a breast, and it has a baby with it, and it's I think the baby had been nursing or something. I can't particularly remember, but you can definitely look at that picture, and you can see like a kind of an ape type face, and with the shoulders and the breasts and the baby. Very, very cool photo.
Where is that photo? Sorry.
That was taken just to cross over into Oklahoma in the Zafra area.
Oh, do you have that photo?
Pardon me?
Do you have that photo?
Well, my friend took that. I think I may have one on my phone.
Probably.
I'll get his. I'll get his permission first, and then I'll send it to you. But I'm pretty sure he'll say yes.
That'd be cool to just have on the podcast notes,
Yeah. See, there's another instance, and this is pretty interesting. I was metal detecting again, but this is now I'm on the other side of this ridge to the west where the Indian mountains are. I'm on the other side of it. There's like a bottom land right next to the creek, and I've got my Shih Tzu with me, and maybe the pit mix is with me. I can't remember. But then we've got 3 or 4 hounds that are chasing a deer. They're just kind of going back and forth like to my right, and then across the creek, going left and right on the other side of the creek. Well, when they got down to my left, on my side of the creek, something broke up their race. They quit. They come back to where I was. They're a little upset, particularly the little bloodhound mix. She's kind of like Lassie. When something's wrong, she lets you know, and then she'll kind of look that way, and kind of, like telling you, hey, there's something wrong. She's always been like that. So she kept on looking that way, and so I, called my friend up who took that photo over in Zafra. I'm like, hey, there's they're acting like something's out there. What what I do? He's like, well, run that way as fast as you can, and then stop suddenly, and then if it's close to you, it'll be moving away, and you'll probably be able to hear it. He's take some pictures, and so I'm like, yeah. I'm thinking I can't run in all these briars and vines. So I walked probably 100 feet or so, and then I took some pictures. There was a slight smell, not very much, just a very slight odor. The next day, I'm looking at the photos, and one photo I looked to the right side, I'm like, well, there's something dark there. Let me zoom in. And you can actually see two eyes. And with the iris is brown with a black pupil and then a black line around the iris. And it's behind some vines, and it's crouched down, and it's probably 3 feet from the ground to the top of its head while it's crouched down. Then if you look to the left of it, you see where it looks like a hand that is reaching around this tree. So it's like it's got a hold of the tree, kind of holding itself up while it's crouching. And you can see the fingers. They're bony fingers. They're not big and fat like some people would think. These are more slender than what you would think. But that's a pretty interesting photo. It's not real clear. Go in, but you can see the eyes. It's really interesting.
Now, you're part of an actual research team, are you, or are you just a lone wolf?
Both. No, I go out a little bit here and there by myself. Maybe I can drag a friend with me, but I have went with I'm part of the Southern Bigfoot Alliance. We've went down to Falk a couple times, and we just had a Falk camp out, which was really cool. But we'll go out over into the Mercer Bayou, close to the Sulphur River. And if anybody ever has a chance to go out there to do it, but go as a group, because I think they're kind of a little aggressive in that area.
Right.
But you can hear a lot of interesting howls at night that are not coyotes. When we went out in this down this trail, the mature trees, I'm talking like, ones that are probably 200, 300 or more years old, they're all misshapen. It's like, it's not normal. It's very interesting. So it's like all these trees have been manipulated. But there were a lot of X's. There were branches that were arranged, sticks arranged like the letter A, which I think they're like saying, yeah, Shelly Alston.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, there's like a letter A, it's like a little teepee house or something. I don't know what kind of shape that means, but it's like a letter A. And of course, then you got the X's. Well, no, we've got some X's here too. It's pretty interesting. And then you've got other trees, like a big tree. I don't know how you can pick up like a 6-inch diameter tree that's been picked up and placed in, where it's going horizontally, with 2 or 3 trees holding it. Other trees just picked up and moved, like not live trees, but, dead. That this thing is not, didn't grow there, but it's been placed there and everything's been manipulated. It's a very, very cool area.
Yeah, I think I'd be quite scared around there from everything that I've heard.
Yeah, I definitely don't want to go down there by yourself, and make sure somebody is armed.
Yeah.
But that was a really good place to go. Now, actually, Southern Bigfoot Alliance, finally, it was back in, I think, September is when I reached out to Shane Church of Southern Bigfoot Alliance. I was like, hey, I've got all this going on out here. Would y'all be interested in coming and taking a look at it? And so he and 3 other people, they came up for a weekend and camped out, and I took them out there to that West Ridge and along the creek. And of course, there's a place out there where you've got a bunch of small trees, like 4, 5, 6-inch diameter trees that have been all picked up and all laid side by side, pointing the same direction. 10, 12 trees. That's not normal. So something has done that, and then you've got other trees that are like letter X. Little sticks that have been placed and kind of woven in between each other. Stuff doesn't fall like that. It has to be manipulated. And you've got trees that are all like in a circle that are all bent downwards, pointing, into the middle of the circle. Again, that's not normal. That doesn't happen naturally. So there's just quite a bit of stuff here, and it's been a lot of fun. And we're having a festival in September, hopefully, after this quarantine and everything's over with. We're actually going to be taking people out into the woods, like little mini expeditions at night, several groups, like maybe 8 to 10 people a group, each with an experienced researcher with that group. And that leader, each leader will have a walkie-talkie that we'll be able to listen, and we'll have some FLIR, do some thermal and some parabolic mics and stuff, and see what we can do, and let people get experience, learn a little bit, find out what happens when people do. When you go out an expedition, how does it work?
Now, do you guys have a YouTube channel or a website or something?
I have a website for the zip line, and it has information on there about the festival.
Okay.
And that is blueziplinefarm.com.
Yep, that comes up when I call you, actually.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's listed here, and I'm using Google Voice. It's free. It's not like Skype where you have to pay to call a phone. You can just call through Google Voice for free. So it's a really handy tool for podcasting.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah. So, anything else you'd like to share with us? Any other encounters, or too many to mention?
I don't know where to start, man. I see. You know what? There was one thing one night that was really odd. This has been about 3 years ago now, and I went to. My son was going to bed. It was like really cold, or at least I was cold. It was cold. It was December, and it was cold. But I was like one of those days where I just could not get cold, get warm. And so I went to, my son's going to bed, and I go in his room, and he's had this little electric heater on, and that the door's been shut, so it's like incredibly warm. So I'm like, okay, Gregory, I'm sleeping in here tonight, or at least for a while. So I lay down in the bed, and in probably just a few minutes, we can hear this talking, but between two people. One is like a lower voice, like a male. The other one is kind of a little bit higher. Don't know, it's female, but not like a soprano. Could be more like an alto type voice. And they're having a conversation, going back and forth. I'm like, what is this? This is crazy. And we can hear it on the middle wall, and we're in a double wide right now, and so we're up against where the two halves of the house meet. So there's no insulation there, but there's a little bit of opening where it goes down to underneath the house. So I can see that acting like a megaphone with the metal underpinning around the outside. And we could, it wasn't from our phone. There's no video game on. The radio's not even plugged in. TV's off. And we heard that went on for about 10 minutes. And we never could figure out where it was coming from. I don't know if it was somebody outside talking. I'm thinking, but since we couldn't make out what the words were, you don't know. Bigfoot's talking to one another. I'm not sure, but not. I've heard other voices out. One day I was driving. I was in the pickup, and I was stopped up by the mailbox. It rained the night before, and so I wanted to see if any fossils had been uncovered, and after I got out of the pickup, I heard talking out in the woods about this, closer to the property line. And I'm like, well, who's out there? There shouldn't be anybody out there. And so I was out there 15, 20 minutes, found some fossils. And then as I'm going on down the road to the house, I hear something to the left, just on the other side of these privet shrubs that are like overgrown and stuff. And it's like somebody's rustling through the leaves trying to hide. And I looked back and I didn't see anything, but it sounded like it was probably just right off the side of the road, maybe 10, 12 feet, maybe. But there's always something interesting, it seems like. But, if anybody's to come out here, I could easily show them some strange shapes out in the woods.
You have a lot going on down there.
Yeah. We've had some campers out here where something has gone through this stuff, like open their tent and stuff moved around, but nothing's missing. I've had some strange things appear out in the field up in the North 40. I've had some things that I've had out in the North 40 brought up out of the woods and out in the field. It's like, why? Why has this chicken cart been moved? Why is my chicken cart out here in the middle of the field? This was down here in this gully where I had it. I've had like an antique saucepan, appear in this one area where I go to a lot when I'm metal detecting. An old tire appeared out in the field in that same area. One day, then this is really odd. This was back, 2 years ago. It would be 2 years ago, I think, in May. I was out working in the garden, and of course I'm down on my knees, and I'm wishing I had like one of those little rubber things, that you put your knees on, so when you're working in the garden. And I'll be damned if the next day there's one laying out there about 20 feet from the garden.
Wow, that's strange.
Yeah, it's like one of those little trifo rubber, knee protectors for kneeling on. So I'm like, well, that's pretty cool. Like, thank you, Bigfoot. I don't. That's the only thing I can think. Why would this appear? Just appear here. Nobody's been out here. So I don't know. Maybe it's what and they're intelligent. They know a little bit what's going on. Gotta give them. They don't get enough credit.
Yeah.
There was one night I had a workshop with some overnight camping. And the last night of it, well, there was rain in the forecast, so it kind of, everybody left except for one person. But we had broke out the wine. Me and one of my friends was here, and so there's three of us, and so got out like a box of wine, and so we each had a glass. And then I left the wine out underneath the canopy, sitting in a chair, and in that chair there was a case of Dr. Pepper up on its end, or not a case, but a 12-pack. And then on the other side was the box of wine. I was sitting in the same chair. Well, the next morning I go out there, and the other guy, he slept in his car all night because of the rain and stuff. He wasn't going to stay in his tent. And I go out there, and that box of wine is moved about 40 feet or so. And it's sitting upright. And there's no claw marks on it or teeth marks or anything. It was picked up and then something set it down. But that Dr. Pepper, the 12-pack of Dr. Pepper is actually still up on its end, so it's not like an animal, got up there and drug it off, or there'd be teeth marks.
Right.
So whatever it was careful and didn't knock the 12-pack over. Just little things like that all the time.
Wow. Well, Shelly, if there's anything else, I'll be keeping an eye out on Facebook, and let me know if this seems to be very ongoing, and I'd love to hear some more if you come across anything else in the future. All
right, I'll let you know. Especially if it's anything really interesting. Well, I'd like to go out there some tomorrow and during the day, and just kind of stay out there and just hang around in just one area and just see what happens, see what shows up.
Check on the TV dinner.
Definitely, yes. See if he ate that chocolate chip cookie. I had to eat half the chocolate chip cookie after I opened it, so he only got half of one.
Well, thanks for coming on the show, Shelly. It was a pleasure speaking to you.
All right. Well, thank you. It was my pleasure to be on it. I'm very honored.
Yeah, I will. I'll give you a shout when it's live, and thanks again.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Shelly.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye now.